Thank you, Acting Speaker, and I too rise to speak in support of the Corrections Legislation Amendment Bill of 2025. In doing so, I'd like to begin by acknowledging the Minister for Corrections, his office, his department, Corrections Victoria, and all of the stakeholders who've come together to help develop and progress the passage of this bill. As parties, I'd like to particularly thank and commend all of our Corrections Victoria office workers across the state who work every single day to keep our justice, custodial and prisons safe, and in turn who work to keep our community safe. And it's because of this we must continue doing all we can as legislators and policymakers to help keep our Corrections Victoria staff safe too. I'd like to acknowledge all of our corrections staff across the state, including particularly those who live and work in my electorate. There are quite a few, including in Pascoe Vale, Coburg and Brunswick West, including my wife Anna, who was a long-time Corrections Victoria and Prisons officer and who is celebrating her birthday today as well. Acting Speaker, this bill will continue to support all of our corrections staff across the state. And Corrections Victoria's vision is for safer prisons, safer people and safer communities. Their mission is to create a safer, smarter system with a skilled and supported workforce that enables people in their care to make better decisions. Corrections Victoria is home and responsible for over 3,000 staff and operates Victoria's adult prison and post-sentence system, and they run 15 correctional facilities across Victoria. 13 of them are for male prisoners, 2 for female prisoners, 6 prisons for maximum security prisons, 5 medium security prisons and 4 are minimum security prisons. And these prisons, for the record, include Barwon, Melbourne Assessment Prison, the MAP, Melbourne Remand Centre, MRC, Port Phillip Prison, Western Plains, Fulham Maximum Security, Hopkins Maximum Security, Middleton Maximum Security, Ravenhall Maximum Security, Beechworth Medium Security, Judy Lazarus Transition Centre, Kyle is medium security, Dame Phyllis Frost, the women's prison, and also Tarrangower. As of June 2025, there were over 6,500 adult prisoners in Victoria, 95% of which were male, 5% are female, 40% are on remand and 60% are sentenced. Corrections Victoria do essential work to help keep our community safe, of course, by remanding and housing some of our state's most dangerous, notorious and repeat violent offenders. But they do also undertake a lot of critical work by aiming to reduce the risk of reoffending through case management informed by sound risk assessments, delivery of offence-specific and offence-related programs and transition into support programs post-release. And Corrections Victoria in that regard also help oversee our post-sentencing and release schemes. And the Victorian Labor Government have been working to strengthen our justice system to keep Victorians safe from crime. We have already passed those new tougher bail laws, meaning that serious and repeat offenders are taken off the streets. This year's budget invested $727 million in new funding for the corrections and youth justice systems to ramp up capacity. This will mean that our custodial facilities will continue to be safe and focused on supporting people to turn their lives around. That new funding package, of course, will increase the number of staff working right across our corrections and youth justice system, with over 700 new staff to be recruited. And the new Western Plains Correctional Centre is due to open very soon, adding an extra capacity of over 1,000 maximum security beds into the correction system. And these are all part of a coordinated effort to help build a fairer and more resilient and robust corrections and community safety system. The Corrections Legislation Amendment Bill of 25 makes a number of targeted and important changes, of course, to keep our community safe, including for our hard-working corrections officers. The bill will make a number of important amendments to corrections-related legislation, including the Serious Offenders Act of 2018, the Serious Offenders Registration Act of 2004 and the Corrections Act of 1986. These changes are about keeping the Victorian community safe from the risk of harm caused by serious offenders, both in the community and within our correctional facilities. And this bill is part of a number of reforms that this Victorian Labor Government has brought before this Parliament to crack down on those serious offenders, including, as I said, the recent bail laws, a ban on the sale of machetes, and this week's announcement, of course, of the new post and boast laws. The bill will deliver recommendations of the review of the Serious Offenders Act of 2018, otherwise known as the Harper Review, and ensure community safety risks posed by serious offenders are appropriately managed, denounce assaults on custodial officers and address other provisions of the Corrections Act of 1986 that are not operating as originally intended. As I said, there's over 3,000 people working as correction workers, Acting Speaker, in our public prisons right across this state, and they are the front line of our prison and in many ways criminal justice system as well. While their work is largely largely unseen to most people in the community. They are working hard every single day and night to keep Victorians safe from crime, and we should thank them for that. But their work can also be dangerous. Every day they are working with the most dangerous people in the community, as I mentioned, people that the courts have decided that we all need to be protected from. Unfortunately, sometimes correction workers are subject to violence and aggression from people in custody, and that is unacceptable. Violence and aggression has no place in any workplace, particularly our prisons. They should be treated no differently. That is why this bill will make important changes to make sure that there are real penalties for people in custody who assault a corrections worker. The bill will define assaulting a correction worker as a prison offence under the Corrections Act. This will mean that once Victoria Police charge a prisoner with assault and they are found guilty of that offence by a court, the court must impose an additional sentence to be served on top of the sentence that the prisoners are already serving. Too often courts are directing that sentence be served at the same time concurrently as the prisoner's existing sentence, and it has no impact on the prisoner's release date. This means that there is no real practical consequence for committing an assault on a corrections officer. This bill will change that and ensure that there are real punishments for assaulting corrections officers at work. And this change will also act to incentivise for people in custody to be violent towards staff, hopefully reducing the number of these assaults that occur into the future. The bill also makes a number of changes to the Serious Offenders Act. This act has been in place since 2018 and establishes the post-sentence scheme. This scheme provides for the supervision and risk management of serial sexual offenders and serious violent offenders after they have completed their prison sentence. The Act allows these offenders to be subject to a supervision order with a range of conditions designed to prevent them from committing further harm to the community, overseen by the post-sentence authority. And this is designed to cover the most serious offenders that are not in jail, and at any one time there are up to 150 people subject to such supervision orders. This scheme arose, of course, out of the Harper Review conducted back in 2015 and is targeted to the most serious offenders who have completed their court-imposed custodial sentence, and a statutory review of the scheme was completed in 2023 and subsequently informing the need for further changes and reforms. The Sex Offenders Register is another important tool protecting the community to keep us safe from the risk posed by known sex offenders in the community. There are some crossovers between this Act and the Serious Offenders Act, both of which are aimed at ensuring we have an appropriate level of supervision of sex offenders. This will make a small change to improve the interaction between the two schemes by requiring people who are subject to a supervision order to have reporting obligations under the Sex Offenders Register for 5 years after their supervision order ends. The bill also makes some minor changes to the operation of the parole system, which is supported by the Independent Adult Parole Board, and the bill clarifies the application of no body, no parole provisions for use only in homicide cases where the location of the deceased remain unknown at the time the perpetrator is being considered for parole. This is the original intent of the provisions and will save significant administrative and reporting burdens placed on Victoria Police to provide evidence of cooperation by the perpetrator, even in cases where it is not relevant. And of course, Acting Speaker, these reforms are built on the feedback and the views of many across the sector, particularly the correction staff and proud members of the Community and Public Services Union. As per their media release of the 1st of May 25, I quote, "Prison workers will not accept unsafe workplaces, collapsing morale and poor leadership. These changes reflect the lived experiences and the strong desire for meaningful change at the top of the department, and will now, through these changes, I should add, formally communicate that these changes will help make the systems safer for corrections officer." And in that respect, I turn to the amendments moved by the Shadow Minister, and frankly, to cut to the chase, when it comes to handcuffing, there already are powers in place and provisions in the existing Act for corrections officers and prison staff to use handcuffs to keep them safe in situations they deem appropriate. And Speaker, it'll go without saying that I'm also supporting this bill in the context of someone whose community was home to Pentridge Prison, one of the oldest prisons and institutions in this state's history, established in December 1850 until it closed in 1997, and it was notorious for many reasons, and including through the infamous H Division. But it's also tragically a place where many correction staff over the years suffered and were abused as well, and arguably the most infamous such instance of prison staff treatment in the state potentially occurred on the 19th of December in 1965 when Ronald Ryan and Peter Walker, both serving sentences for armed robbery, broke out of B Division on the corner of Sydney Road and today's Pentridge Boulevard opposite St Paul's Church. After 2 p.m, when many prison officers were distracted by a Christmas party, they climbed the 5-metre prison wall to disarm and overpower a guard at the watchtower and forced him to open the gate. As Ryan and Walker sprinted down Sydney Road and Champ Street and tried to commandeer a passing car, an unarmed officer, George Hodson, tried to stop them and was shot dead through the heart. Ryan Walker were captured in Sydney 17 days later after killing Arthur Henderson and robbing a bank. And after a 12-day trial, after being captured in March 1966, Ryan was found guilty of prison officer George Hodson's murder, a sentence that carried the death penalty but which was usually commuted at the time to a life sentence. However, it was then Premier Sir Henry Bolte who refused to commute the sentence, and despite the prolonged and strenuous efforts of many eminent people and community campaigns, gathered outside of Pentrich to oppose the death penalty.